Does failure lead to success? Well, research shows that you would overwhelmingly think that it does, much more than in reality. According to a meta-analysis of 11 different studies, participants predicted that 50% of overdose survivors would seek treatment. In reality, only 16% did. And this overestimation is true for lawyers and for nurses and for teachers at 30 and 40 and 20% when they make a mistake. And so why is this? Well, I believe the heart of the problem stems from this saying, that failure is a blessing in disguise. And in reality, we've never been taught just how to rip off that disguise. My name is Deli Szilágyi, and I am the president and co-founder of StudentLink, an international volunteer tutoring organization present in 10 countries in 3 continents, the co-founder of the Danube Summit, shaping the future of entrepreneurship in Europe, and I'm a youth Olympic athlete. Just 8 months ago, I had open heart surgery, and it was the most difficult thing I've had to face. And I learned this about ripping off that disguise. Now raise your hands if you've failed before. Oh, that's a good amount. And congrats, because that's a very difficult thing to admit. And that's exactly step 1 to ripping off that disguise. You admit failure. Now, just 2 months before I found out I had to have heart surgery, I attended the Winter Youth Olympic Games. This essentially meant that I went from being an elite athlete, one of the best in my nation and a national champion, to grappling with the fact that I either die at 40 or I risk dying at 18. This meant that I risked losing the one thing I put most of my effort in, my body, my performance. And it also meant that I risked losing a part of myself, my identity. And that's exactly why it's so hard to admit failure. Because in doing so, we risk losing ourselves. Because to admit failure is to admit reality. And that means letting go of our delusions of who we think we are and who we deserve to be. So we must embrace that failure. Because we must embrace reality. And only then can we truly change. Now, this is easier said than done. And I didn't do this. I didn't want to admit death. And I didn't want to admit this challenge. And so I ignored it. And that went really, really well, up until the point when I was sat on my hospital bed, in my hospital gown, next to my dad, waiting to get wheeled into the surgery room in an hour. And then, it was a little hard not to be scared. Step 2, question yourself. In the span of 10 hours, I lost 15 kilograms of muscle. Muscle I worked years for. Those 10 hours caused me shivers and fevers for weeks after. But those 10 hours also taught me something, that I was fragile. That no matter how hard I work at something, it might be ripped away from my hands at any moment. But is that a good thing to learn? No. That submits myself to failure. That says that whatever I do and however hard I work, it's useless. And so I knew I had to change that. And I knew I had to question myself. And once I did I recognize that yes, while I may be fragile, and while my body may go from perfectly healthy to near death in a day, there is one thing that guides me along. My mind. Oh, sorry. Wait. We're going to go back in the recording a little bit here. Now let me give you an example. What do you think is the best? Again. Now let me ask you a question. Have you ever failed a math test before? Now, raise your hands if you have. Oh, good amount. And that's step one. That's admitting it. And so, what do you think the best response is to facing that failure? Step one, or option A. You throw your hands up, exclaim that you're an idiot, and sulk in the corner, refusing to look at that stupid test. Or option B, you grab your test and question by question, line by line, figure out exactly where you went wrong. Clearly, option B is the better option. And yet, what do 53% of people do? They choose option A. They refuse to look at that failure, and they refuse to face that challenge. And so, I ask you this. Which side of the coin do you want to be on? There's step 3. And step 3 is the hardest step. You keep choosing option B. You keep doing it. And you recognize that your life is not black and white. And I recognize that every day I keep learning from mistakes I've had years ago. And every day you must wake up and recognize that your life is at a crossroads. That you are in complete control of your destiny. And in that moment, you choose what's harder. You choose option B. You face that failure and you face that challenge. And you keep doing that again and again. And only then will you recognize that failure really is a blessing in disguise. And only then will you really learn how to rip off that disguise. Thank you.